Welcome to the Pursuit of Growth show, where we hold candid conversations with fascinating individuals from all walks of life to learn about their passions, successes, failures, lessons learned, and how they apply personal growth to their lives. We end our conversations, as always, with key takeaways that we can implement in our lives to better ourselves and the lives of the other people around us and the people that watch this show. I'm joined by my co-host and good buddy, Greg Brinkley. Greg, how's it going tonight?
Man, it's going good, Sammy, and I'm super excited about this episode of the Live TPG show. You know, we've had a lot of really good friends that have joined us on this show, but this is the first friend that I can say is a lifelong friend that I've known since I was a young kid, James Henson. James, welcome to our show.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Well, who is James Henson? Well, James Henson is not only a lifelong friend of mine, but he's a licensed professional counselor, a certified mindfulness and meditation instructor, and a certified business and life coach. He spent the last 10 years working as a therapist, a meditation teacher, but he has transitioned his life to coaching over the past 3 years. Most of his current work focuses on helping people start or improve their businesses, find a new path in life, and deal with anxiety. He's creating and teaching a course right now called Befriending Anxiety. It's built around an idea that anxiety is necessary and serves a function, but our hardware and software is very much out of date. So this program aims to help people learn to coexist with anxiety by recognizing that it's simply an energy in the body and that our thoughts turn into an unpleasant experience. He's also working on a new book called Simple Ways to Have a Good Life that pulls together everything that helped him personally change his life and what he's seen change other people's lives over the past 20 years, all put together in a simple, short, and actionable book with chapters that you can apply to your life. In addition, if that's not enough, he's currently writing another project called You Are Not the Main Character, a guide to getting over yourself, which focuses on the increasingly self-centered and narcissistic behavior that is becoming the norm in our society. James, welcome to the show once again. We're super excited to dive into a lot of subject matter with you. And man, I'm just going to jump right in and just give you the first question. On your website, you claim that your goal, actually, I'm reading a different first question.
I just thought about that too. Yeah, that's an old one.
Your motto, James, is you believe in people. Tell us what that means to you and how did that become your motto?
Man, just doing this work with people for all these years now. Like the thing that kept jumping out at me is just that I don't really meet bad people. I don't meet people who, yeah, there are malicious people. There are people who make bad choices and stuff. But I really find that it's everybody's doing the best they can with what they have available to them. And when you are able to get down to that, when you're able to kind of dig into why are you doing what you're doing, what's your perceived benefit? Are there other things? Like people almost always want to find a different way to do things, find a better way. And across the board, I find that people are capable. I think that given the right set of circumstances and the right help, like everybody does good stuff. For the most part, there's ideologies out there and, things like addiction and stuff like that skew a person, but like at their core, people just want to do the right thing. It's just a lot of times they're approaching it unskillfully. And so I do believe in people. Just in all these years, I haven't met anybody I don't like. I've met people who are, super problematic, man, but nobody that I like actively dislike. So yeah, and so that's just, I think somebody else gave that to me. I think somebody else said that like my biggest strength was that I believe in people. And I was like, I'd never thought about that. I really thought I was kind of cynical and kind of like anti-people. And then I looked at my life and it's like, holy crap, all I do is spend all my time with people. So this image I had of myself was incorrect.
Yeah, talk about that, because I think a lot of times I look at myself, right? And sometimes I can be really difficult on myself because inside my mind, I'll find myself whether it's judging people or having negative opinions of just different things that are going on in our world. And typically it's those little petty things that just really frustrate us, or just the little things that just, catch us off guard on an idle Tuesday at 2:00. But they're short, they're sweet, and then they're gone. But yet I will hold on to, that thought and feel so guilty and almost punish myself for it. How did you kind of get to a point to where you felt like, you know what, I am a person that believes in people. And even though I might have some different like thought processes or some negativity, that's not something that I'm going to lay a blanket on and just like, just suffocate in it.
Man, I think I think we all internalize labels, like from people over our lives and stuff. My whole life I've been told that I'm difficult, that I'm, you're not living up to your potential was one. And I got this idea that I just didn't like people, that I didn't trust people. And I don't know why. I see, my assumption is that it's probably like a defense mechanism, because if you don't like people, if you don't trust them, you don't got to deal with people. You don't got to take that risk of really dealing with them honestly, because it's like, I already know you, I already know what you do. And just over the years, as I really just started kind of deconstructing all of these stories I had about myself, the identities I'd invested in, the identities I'd had placed on me. I think that was maybe some of the last ones, was this idea that I don't really like people very much, that I don't, I don't trust them, they're untrustworthy, all that nonsense. Those were some of the last ones that I unraveled. And what hit me was just like, this does not match up to my life. I'm spending all day, every day sitting with people, trying to help them change, trying to help them do different in their life. If I don't like people and I don't trust people and I think they're all shady, like, why would I be doing this? Like, it was very incongruent. Yeah. And, our mind will do that to us all the time if we're not careful. We'll hold two different ideas. What you mentioned about the little things that get into our head about the world and all that, like the question I ask myself probably 10 times a day when I'm feeling that, is I just ask myself, like, what's blocking my love right now? Like, what is blocking my love from getting out to the world? And it's literally that right there. It's always an opinion or a belief of some kind. This should be different. This person's doing this and they shouldn't. And so just, I think learning to watch the mind and recognize that you are not your mind that's the key. Because, the mind is a manifestation of ego. It's just always spinning out a self-defensive story. It's always spinning out a story that's like meant to keep us safe, that's meant to keep us where we are. Because why change? Change is dangerous. Change is scary. But like that ego and love can't exist in the same spot. And so that's the question I asked myself. I got a post written about it. I get like posts written and all ready to go, and then I'm like, but then I'm gonna have to answer comments, and I just don't put them up. But that's one I was thinking about the other day, because I was just like in this headspace of like, I'm trying to watch my language. I was just in this headspace of like, this sucks and that sucks and everything sucks. And so I asked myself, what's blocking my love right now? Oh, it's my opinion about how this should be different and this should be different. And once I recognize that's blocking my love, it's like, oh, well, shit. Now I go anyway. I'm just going to drop this.
You can say shit. You can say shit. It's okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're fine. We're family friendly.
Okay. I don't want to get y'all demonetized.
Yeah.
But when I recognize that that's blocking love, it's so easy to drop it, because there's not anything worth having that blocked, especially no opinion coming out of this stupid head of mine.
That's what I was really, go ahead, Sammy.
I was going to say, I think one of the things that really puts that in perspective is something that you just mentioned. It's like, now it's labeled as something and it's not you, Right, so
there you go.
So like, you're able to say, okay, here's this thing, right? And so what am I going to do with this? Well, I'll just put this over here. Like I no longer have to worry about that, because that's how easy that's how inconsequential it is. Once I remove it, it's there.
Right.
No longer.
And that's what the ego is always doing. It reaches out and makes everything about us, everything about us, to like all the way, like something happening on the other side of the world. And the ego's like, oh my God, what's this going to do to me? To like somebody saying like, I don't know, a band you like, and you hear somebody say like, that band sucks. You don't have anything to do with that. You're not making that music, but the ego's like, that's mine. So they've insulted me. Yeah. And that constantly blocks our love for other people, because we can't be in love and be in like opposition to them at the same time. So
it's interesting how pride and ego are just such toxic things. And Sammy and I both, we go back and forth, because we had some ideas in just terms of the pursuit of growth. and coming up with like some names for different things we wanted to do for like the community of people that are coming on this journey. And we love the image of the lion, right? The aggressive, you know, kind of like, hey, let's attack life and go after things. And, you know, a group of lions are called a pride. And so we had discussed, hey, let's call our community the pride. And then one of the things that we started talking about, that was like, well, there's on the other side, there's also pride, that a different definition can be a really detrimental thing to our mental health. And when it gets checked over into the wrong area. And so, you know, we kind of went back and forth with that, but that's something in the book that we wrote together. We talk about how like pride can just, you know, just inflate your ego. And when you become the star of your own movie, you are setting yourself for a very dangerous path.
Right. You know, pride, I would say pride gets us to be playing in God's yard because we start taking credit for things. And when we start doing that, man, we're in trouble already. We're headed for more trouble because we've started thinking I'm the star and this is about me and I can make this happen. And I don't know, like all the worst things in the world come from that. So, but you know, I mean, the ego's necessary. We gotta be safe. We gotta recognize I am not the snake on the ground, so I don't go pick it up. You know, we got to feed ourselves. But it's just so it just won't stay in its lane. It just expands and expands and expands.
Yeah.
So I think that question for me solves it. Sorry, Sammy, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, yeah, definitely if left unchecked, right? I mean, that's where,
absolutely.
And that's why I think like there's so many times in which I've seen people, and be it you know, someone that's helping other people or someone that gives you the easy 1, 2, 3 step method to changing your life, right? It's like these 3 simple steps. You know, they don't make it about, you know, understanding the ego, right? Or understanding who you are. Because I think you do need to have some bit of ego. You do need to have some bit of pride, but it's the unchecked pride, the unchecked ego, right? The inflation of what that means. And, you know, you should be proud. You should be able to boast accordingly, you know, for maybe goals, successes that you've had and challenges you've met and celebrations. We talk about that in the book, like celebrate those small successes as well. But then you're back to work, you know, and you're continuously improving.
But I think if you can maintain an awareness of the ego while you're doing that changes everything. That's why I tell people, if you're not aware of the ego, it's running the show. Mm-hmm. Whereas if you're aware of it, you can just kind of say, okay, you know, I see, because it's constantly jumping up. It's an undying root. It's constantly trying to jump back up. And so just maintaining it and laughing at it, like learning to laugh at myself. Man, I took myself so seriously for so long. And I was not a person to be taken seriously. There was nothing about me to be taken seriously. And that infuriated me and it just ate me up. Like, why is nobody taking me seriously? And I look back, I'm like, why would you think anybody would? Yeah, exactly. Right. But learning to laugh. And so I laugh at myself a lot. And when I recognize like, oh my God, I was letting this one little thing, this opinion on a news story or this opinion on whatever, I was letting this block my love and connection to this person. It's just so ridiculous. And so it's funny. Unless you don't fix it, then it becomes tragic. But you laugh at it and you can be done. It's easy.
I want to piggyback off what Sammy said, because I think he brings up a really good point about kind of balance, right? And we use an analogy in the book that we wrote, and when we're talking about stress, because the book that we write about, it really deals with stress and anxiety and depression and fear. And stress, you know, is not always a bad thing. There is good stress. We need stress. Just like I'm very excited to talk to you about how you talk about anxiety is something that we need to be able to really understand. It's not always just a bad thing. But it's kind of like with stress, I equate it to like a temperature of a vehicle, like an engine. Like you don't want it to get too hot, because if it gets too hot, then you have problems. And so when you talk to people that are dealing with, you know, anxiety or with stress or with ego, how do you help them to kind of get to that middle ground or whatever that ground is? What are some of the things that you talk about to help them figure out how to manage that?
Well, you know, it's always going to be like individualized to what they're bringing me. But, you know, with stress, you know, I think we have to draw the distinction between like the stress that helps us evolve, the stress that helps us grow. Sharks haven't changed for like 25 million years because they ain't got no stress. Like what messes with a shark? Like nothing messes with a shark, so they don't have to grow and change. And I think I'm trying to think of the book. It was written by, he was in like the Obama administration. I can't remember his name. But they go through and they kind of demonstrate that you literally can't learn anything new without stress.
Right.
It's impossible. You got to have and I tell people like I'm a big fan of constructive conflict. Nothing good in the history of the world has ever happened without some kind of conflict.
Yeah.
Whether it's like civil rights back in the day, anything like that, or like even somebody showing up in my office because they were in conflict with themselves. Like, I don't like this thing that I'm doing. And so they handled it constructively and came in. So that's good. When it becomes overwhelming and shuts you down instead of motivating you, that's when it's become like what they'd call toxic stress. There's a really good documentary about it. I want to say it was called like Paper Tigers. They went to a school up in the Pacific Northwest. It's fantastic looking at like what toxic stress is. I think that's the balance. You know, stress, is it motivating you or is it shutting you down? And if it's shutting you down, like you're out of your lane. You need to adjust some things. But you know, some degree of stress is necessary. Like, why would, like, imagine like carrying a baby around all the time, like kids learning to walk. Like, you ever watch them do that? Like, it's hilarious. They fall over all the time. It looks awful. You know, get those big old heads, like making them all top heavy and stuff. Like, that's a hard thing they got to do.
It's Frankenstein.
But, absolutely, yeah. But they would never learn to do that if you carried them around everywhere. Right. Like, they need the stress of like, oh, I want to go over there. I want to do this. That gets them to overcome that. And so I think that's what we always got to aim for. That's why a lot of the narrative that we get about, like, you know, you make it to 65 and then you retire and you don't do anything. Yeah, you're going to die. Yeah. I mean, look at survival rates. They just plummet when people retire with no purpose, man. Yeah. It's crazy. What a toxic narrative.
Purpose and tribe and community are so important. And one of our former guests who we know pretty well, he speaks a lot, and he's a public speaker, and he speaks a lot about health and wellness, but he focuses mostly on like the tribal community, right? Or the tribes. Like, we're supposed to be in groups of, you know, 50 to 100, right? Yeah. Bartering with each other, hanging out, doing things together, right? Being outside, like, it's part of his everything he talks about. But now we've gone from that to smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller groups. And then what happened last year, right? It was all of a sudden, that was like nobody, right? It was just your immediate family. But if you don't have anyone with you, like, then you're in solitary, like you're solitary.
Devastating.
Right.
Devastating for people, man. The stuff I've seen coming out of that is scary. Did y'all know Sebastian Junger? He wrote the book Tribe.
Yeah. I think
the whole book was just fantastic about that. I mean, that's so important. And we've gone the opposite direction to where, like, did you see the thing that came out this week where it said like the average male in America has like no friends now?
No.
Like, it was just in the news last week. Yeah, they said that group has really dwindled. So we've gone, like, we get people with no friends, but then on top of that, you've got 10,000 friends online. And so you got no support, but you got a bunch of people looking at you.
Right.
And we're not wired for that, man. Like, it's strange. It's strange. Even with as much as I work on Instagram and stuff, it's like I'll get a message from somebody that I don't know. I'm like, well, I don't know what I think about this. And my instinct is like, well, I don't care. Like, who are you? Like, I don't know you. Like, what's the capital you have built up with me? What's the capital that I have built up with you that you care what I have to say? What a baffling world, man. Imagine showing this to, like, even like our recent ancestors in, like, you know, 1000 AD or 1000 BCE, and they'd be like, what are y'all doing?
Heck, James, my parents can't even understand it.
Right. I'm increasingly not. I can't understand TikTok, man.
Yeah.
Well, I'm only 42 or 3 in my 40s. It makes no sense, man.
Well, it's like what Sammy was saying. So Dan Miller was the guest he was referring to, and he talked about how, and forgive me, I'm going to be a little bit off my years, but, you know, 100 years ago, 200 years ago, 500 years ago, the average person had typically 120 people in his tribe. Today, the average person has 8 close people, and he may be quoting even some out of date information based on maybe what you actually read this week. But another thing that's fascinating is Sammy and I have talked about this in depth. There was a Harvard study that came out. Well, it's probably 5-10 years ago now. It was a pretty famous TED Talk. But ultimately, this study was done over 80 years, and it was supposed to be, quote unquote, what makes people happy, right?
Right.
Really what it was about is what brings joy in life. And so to make a long story, like, short, they started with a sample group of like 100 people that grew to 1,000, that grew to like 50,000, 60,000 people.
Right.
And over the course of, I think it was 80 years, they did this study and figured out all the variables that go into making you feel like you live a life of joy. And what they learned was it had very little to do with your income. It had very little to do with your status. It had very little to do with all these ancillary things. The number one variable was the quality of your close relationships. So it goes back to that tribal thing that Sammy was just talking about. And again, we live in a world that is more and more becoming bigger in our connections, but it's becoming smaller in our relationships. And so is that something that you're seeing in terms of your work? Are you seeing just so many people that are coming to you that are having issues because of that particular variable?
Yeah, I think, the low investment, low value connections are they're deadly. They're so awful because like you're getting the criticism. You're having to do like the social performance thing that we all do. You know what I'm saying? It's part of, our identity comes from how other people reflect ourselves back to us, That's our sense. So much of our sense of self comes from that. And so we're having this reflected back by people who have no investment. They don't love me. Like I wrote like my thesis was not great. My grandma loved it because it's my grandma and she, she's invested in me. Whereas now, we post things online and it's like, and it's no matter which way it goes, it's a problem. If it blows up and a lot of people comment, you got to deal with all that. If nobody pays attention to it and even clicks that stupid little button, well, then you think like, oh my God, what's wrong with what I posted? Like it's a lose-lose proposition. And so a big part of my thing on social media is trying to get people disinterested in social media, like uninvested in it, because it's just low investment. It takes nothing to click like. How many people are actually out there like reading and like, I really like what he said. I think he put a lot of work into this. This is really valuable. I'm gonna give him a heart.
Right.
Yeah.
Nobody's doing that. It's like scroll, click, 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 scroll, click, click, click.
Yep.
And for some reason, man, that kicks off our dopamine reward cycle. And we're like, oh my God, And then if nobody does it, then we're like crushed. And I think mostly of kids, like teenagers, man, brutalizing for them. So I have seen that in my work. I've had to talk to kids about, like, well, I posted this and only 3 people liked it. And, Sarah from down the road, who I really like, I know she saw it, but she didn't. And I'm just thinking like, oh my God, how are you supposed to survive this world?
Yeah.
It's tough. And then they like subtweet each other and vague book each other. And it's tough, man. I wouldn't survive it these days. I don't have the constitution.
Yeah, it's amazing because I've got young daughters, so a 5-year-old and a 7-year-old. So they don't, they're not in that world just yet, but they watch stuff on YouTube and every now and then they have friends and it's the old school way still because they're still young, right? So like, so and so, like, I want to go play with so and so because they have this or whatever it may be. But I can't even imagine like trying to parent through right now. Like the older, like the teens, because there's so many of those conversations that are happening when so much is reliant on like what you're looking at here, because we all do it too. I mean, we're always looking at these things for better or worse, whatever it may be, but it's always at our fingertips. And I think that that's one of the scariest things as a parent now, thinking forward to, we're just scratching the surface on what this kind of connection is, right? So what's the next thing, right? You hear about the chip implants in your head or all that, like what happens when we get to the point where it's instantaneous rejection,
right?
It's like, or
people liking or disliking our thoughts.
Exactly. Yeah. Oh so God. Then just like your band, thing. Yeah, just that's like your band analogy.
That's the end for me. Yeah.
Right.
That's
so like,
me,
if somebody doesn't like your, the music that you listen to, you instantly think like, well, then what do they think about me? So man,
because we've commodified that into part of ourselves,
right?
We've taken that. That's because the ego can't find a stable us. Like if you really sit, that's the thing with meditation. That's the thing that they don't really tell you when you start meditating, is that like really what you're going to start realizing is like, man, this idea of me that I'm so attached to and I'm so invested in and I'm so protective of and I think is so awesome. You start looking for it and you can't find it. And so the ego is always spinning it up. But like, there's not any statement we can all make that's 100% about ourselves, except for I'm aware. Awareness is about the basis. But I like, Rancid's been my favorite band forever. And I had like a
love
thing that, like,
Rancid,
that's my band. But I noticed I don't really listen to them anymore because a lot of their stuff's kind of like street oriented, and I'm just not feeling that anymore. I like, I watch a lot of YouTube. But sometimes I'm tired of YouTube. Sometimes I'm like, I don't want to watch anything. I like to read. I don't read 24/7. There's days I don't want to read. There's nothing we can say, but the ego is trying to. The thing that really jumped out at me with the ego, the picture I got is, I'm out here in West Texas. We get these dust devils,
Mm-hmm.
and I noticed it was like dirt, and then I saw a box fly up, and I thought, oh my God, like that thing's invisible. It's not really there, but the dirt and the box and the trash make it look like it is, and that's what the ego's doing.
Mm.
It's like, oh, here's a box, you like Rancid. Here's a we actually have literal tumbleweeds in them out here. Here's a tumbleweed. This is the YouTube stuff that you like, and so you see all these different identities. I'm a gamer. I'm a what are the Harry Potter fans called? I'm a Potterhead. I'm a Whovian. We're turning everything into identity, but it's deadly when we're putting it out there for people who don't care about us to assess and have an opinion on.
Something that we talk about a lot on this show is, comparison is the thief of joy. Absolutely. And, as you start living your life focused on how the opinion of other people, it determines your self-worth, it's just a dangerous path to go on. Mm-hmm. And it's something that I'll be transparent. It's something that I struggle with every single day. I catch myself just falling into those pitfalls of, okay, if I do this action, what are the consequences going to be? And it's kind of like you talked about earlier, James, you've got to stop and almost like kill that thought, silence that voice in your head and say, okay, I'm doing this because it's the right thing to do, or it's because it's because of whatever reason. And I need to block out all this other stuff. And it's that ego that's just constantly, fighting for the attention, right? It's a crazy thing to think about.
Right. Yeah. It's such a mess. But it's funny. Like, it's fun. It's hilarious and it's awesome. And it's so much fun. If you can turn it into a game of just seeing, the ego pops up and just saying, I see you. I see you. I see what you're doing, man. Like, I'm onto you. And it goes from being like this, like, vicious guard dog that's like got you locked in your own house to like, it's just a mischievous kid. It's always trying to grab the cookies. It's our job to catch it. It's its job to try to grab the cookies.
We had a conversation with Mary Lyons, who's a extremely talented financial advisor here in Dallas.
Oh yeah, I was watching.
We were talking about the voice in your head. And, she talked about, she had coaches that had advised her, name that voice. And this is actually something that I've done. And her voice is Linda. And so she will be like, in the middle of the day, she'll just be like, shut up, Linda. And boom, it's gone. And I thought that was such a brilliant way of just putting that out there. Yeah. But it's so true. And when I tell the voice inside my head to shut up, I got to do it often, but it works. And I can continue to move forward.
I encourage people to externalize it. Like, take your thoughts and pretend somebody else was saying them to you. And a majority of the time, like 99% of the time, you would not accept them. Mm-hmm. You would not accept what you say to yourself from somebody else. So I externalize it all the time. I'll pretend, like, if I'm driving, I'll pretend there's somebody in the seat and they're saying, you're too stupid to do this. When I say that to myself, I'm like, yeah, you're probably right. But if somebody else were to say that to me, like, that's where my argumentative side comes out. And I want to be like, well, no, I'm not the brightest, but let me explain why this would work. Yeah. It's astonishing what happens when we externalize that.
Yeah.
The way that I've always done that too, which it's kind of very similar to like the seat in the cars. Greg's heard me talk a lot about set and setting, right? So I see myself in a certain set or a certain setting, and say I'm anxious or say I'm stressed, whatever it may be. I literally picture myself like getting up, my body staying there, and I just stand next to myself and think about like hovering over my shoulder. It's like, all right, how can I help you solve this problem?
There you go.
Right. And so it's like, okay, like, and because of my nature, I really enjoy helping other people. So I do that to myself. It's like, okay, how can I help myself solve this problem? Let me get another set of eyes on it. Right. And so, and that's the way that I've kind of been able to use that set and setting. So like here in my office, my work desk is back here, and this is a different desk here. But that's where it's like, all right, well, let me take a step back, literally stand up, take a step back, and just kind of survey the landscape of this project, right? Like, what is it? Does it time frame? Okay, time frame. How do we typically deal with time frame? Like, okay, well, we're playing backwards, and so it's like just going through that mentality, but getting away from it. And I think a lot of people don't do that. because we are bolted to the chair, or, bolted to the
Right.
computer or the phone or whatever it is. So yeah, sometimes you just got to get beside yourself, literally.
Yeah. But overcoming that inertia is hard.
Mm-hmm.
Like we kind of want to keep doing what we're doing, no matter what. And we're taught that we are our mind, that you are your thoughts, that you are your, that everything, like what's going on in your head, that's you.
Right.
But the thing is, like right now, don't think of a basketball. Don't think of Africa. Don't think of Africa by Toto. Like you're thinking of all those things. You can't help it because that's not you. These are arisings that they pop into your skull from something going on around you. And then the mind starts tracking that down. Oh, I remember I like Africa by Toto. And I remember I was driving one time and da-da-da-da-da. And oh my God, you remember that Weezer cover? That really sucked. Why would Weezer do that? That's why I've always hated Weezer. And before long, like you're not even there anymore. But you think that's you? Like that's not you. That's just, that's like this reflective thing in your head just run amok. And so I think being able to step away from that and recognize if you can observe your thoughts, it's not you. Anything you can observe cannot be you. And so, but we're taught that because in the West, we prioritize intellectualism so much. We're so proud of our brain.
It's interesting you say that, James. I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on what I'm about to say. Whether you call it a hack or you just call it just working on your mental health, just like you would work your body out in the gym. I actually read, this is probably going back about 2 or 3 years ago. I read an article that didn't exactly say what I'm about to say, but it put the thought in my head, and it was talking about perception, right?
Right.
And it really, so much about our life is how we perceive it, but then how we internalize it. And it was talking about gratitude. It was talking about like the trials and challenges that we face in life. And ultimately, when I finished reading this article, it made this light bulb go off in my head. What if I practice being grateful for the trials in my life? What if I practiced looking at like these things that show up that I'm like, wow, this is really going to be hard. And this gives me that anxiety. This gives me that pain. And I'm going to answer that with good, because I've got to define the why behind why that is good. And that why is it's going to make me a stronger friend. It's going to make me a better family member. It's going to make me a better business person. It's going to make me, a stronger, supporter of my community, whatever, fill in the blank, right? And so finding the why behind why challenges are good has been a really, really powerful tool for me. But it's not something that I just read once and said, okay, I got it. I literally have to do in my meditation, in my quiet time every morning, I have to go through that routine and kind of program my mind to be prepared to think that way. And so I just be kind of curious to hear your thoughts on that.
I love that. I think it was Viktor Frankl, but I think he was quoting Nietzsche. If you have a why, you can endure anyhow.
Yeah.
And then, and Nietzsche talked about the concept of amor fati, which was love of fate, wishing nothing was different before, after, now. That's huge, that no matter what comes your way, saying, okay, good. I think Jocko does that. I think Jocko Willink talks about that. Like, okay, good.
That's Sammy's guy.
Yep.
Jocko's legit. Just tune. I'll jump on his podcast and listen to his military analysis of stuff. And I'm not even a big military guy, but I'm super fascinated by that. But I think that's one thing he said. He was like, okay, good. He was talking about, I think they were in Ramadi or something, and they're like, they ran out of ammo. And he's like, okay, good. This will force us to really get good at this. And like, oh, and now now this happened. Now we lost this street. Okay, good. That's going to force us to really work together in a small space. So I think, and practicing gratitude and everything is everything. Sorry, Greg.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, so, I had talked about this with Sammy before, and then he sent me that video of Jocko of just good. And I was like,
cool.
Okay. Cool. Then I go, Jocko, just basically what I've been trying to say and explain in 500 words, just all went down to one word, good. And I was like, thank you, Sammy, for sharing this with me. It was amazing.
There you go. I think that anything that directs us away from ourselves and, makes us, kind of look outside and say, what am I going to do about this? This idea that that obstacles and tribulations are a problem, that's very egocentric. That's like this idea that this shouldn't happen to me. Well, why not? Like who told you that? Where did you get that idea that this should not happen to you? Where did you get the idea that this is bad? It might just be inconvenient. I tell people all the time, like a majority of the stuff that's happened to me, the best things that have happened to me are things I would not have picked for myself. I used to drive through Lubbock multiple times a year, on the way to Red River, going from Austin area to northern New Mexico. And I always said, I'll never live in a place like this. Man, I got here 20 years ago and this place saved my life. I got a business, I got a family, I got all sorts of stuff that people like me don't have. You know what I'm saying? Like 14, 15, 16-year-old James, if you had said like, hey, this isn't your future, shut up. 20-year-old James would have been absolutely not, that's not in my future. But it all happened in this place that I swore I'd never live. I think of think about 9/11, like imagine like some dude driving, he's got an interview on the top floor, and it's going to be like, maybe he's going to become partner of his firm or whatever, like those kind of fancy people interview for. Mm-hmm. He gets a flat tire. He's like, this is the worst thing that happened. But he's changing the tire and he looks over and he sees airplanes hit the building. Like he would have had a very clear look at how this misfortune prevented a much bigger misfortune. Like he'd be in the fortunate position of seeing that. Imagine how much misfortune we miss that we never even know about. Because we dropped our coffee on the way out, because the car didn't start, because just all the little things that go wrong in life.
I think about that from an opportunity standpoint too, and not in that you're missing opportunity, but like in a professional career, right? If you took this role versus this other role at a different company, right? Or there's so many options, right? It's just it's a tree branch, right? And you never know where you're gonna go, but you can't necessarily just always be looking at all the other branches and all the other leaves around you. I mean, you can from an observer standpoint, but don't always wish that you're on the other one, like they always say about the grass isn't always greener, right? But it's sometimes you just got to see where you are.
It's greener where you water it, straight up, and that's, I think we spend so much time. It's really strange. I wonder if video games have contributed to this. And I'm sure this went on before, but like I talked to so many people who have this idea that like they're supposed to be somewhere else. Like I got on the wrong path. I wasn't supposed to be. Like, I don't understand what that means. Like this right here, this moment that we're all sitting here, this is the totality of our lives right now. Every moment is the unfolding of everything in your life. Like where is this other place? Where does this exist? It's in your head. It does not exist. And I guess it's fun to think about. But like I see people get like obsessed with it. Like, oh my gosh, if I just, if I'd ask that girl out, I'd be happy and I'd have kids. And well, maybe you'd have an STD and you'd be brokenhearted. Like you don't know how this plays out.
James, I love what you bring that up in, because I can't tell you how many times I've been a part of those conversations over the last 5, 10, 20 years of if I would have just, to Sammy's point, taken this job, if I would have moved to this place, if I wouldn't have done this, wouldn't have done that. But they're always thinking about what decision they would have made that they perceived their life would have been better. But they're not talking about what decisions they could have made to where they've been like, yeah, I'd be freaking in a terrible marriage, homeless with 5 STDs, or in jail because of a decision that I would have made, right?
The brain idealizes it. The brain idealizes it. It looks at the girl that broke up with you when you were 23 and it says, oh my gosh, we would have been so happy. Well, were y'all completely happy then?
Right.
Like she was kind of mean when she broke up with you. Did she just suddenly become an angel? Like what happens here? It's so irrational, but the brain loves to idealize that. Oh my gosh, if I'd taken that job, I'd be living in New York. And but maybe you got hit by a cab and you're dead. Maybe you're dust. You know what I'm saying?
Maybe you're workaholic and you hate your life, right? Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, maybe you started drinking. Like how many things can go wrong here? But the brain idealizes, and that's where we suffer. It's the comparison is the thief of joy, but it's also like this idealized, perfect comparison of a world that does not exist. So of course you suffer. And so I really find that if I just stay right here, right now, and that includes not in my thoughts, everything is fine. Everything is fine. This even works with like physical pain. I have pretty chronic pain from many of the stories that Greg has mentioned. But even pain is just a thing that's happening in your body. It's your body trying to help. It's your body saying, hey, this needs attention. The stuff I've got, there is no attention to fix it that I'm comfortable with. I don't want a fused neck yet. I don't want that. I don't want to eat Oxycontin. So the pain itself is just pain. It turns into suffering when I start wishing it was different. Because then I'm not in the moment. Then I'm off in this other world of like, oh my gosh, if I hadn't wrecked that car, if I hadn't done this, I'm no longer in the moment, so I'm suffering. But the brain always wants to go off and look at these other things. It all just comes down to the mind, mistaking ourselves for mind, mistaking ourselves for ego, I think.
There's a lot of insight that you're providing us. Because I don't know you as well as Greg knows you, but one of the things I was interested in learning after reading more about your website, listening to podcasts, but your path to where you are now, right? To becoming a social worker, counselor, life coach, mindfulness instructor, etc. What do you think led you to having that realization that this is where you wanted to go, versus where you were whenever you mentioned like you were in a much different place?
So, I mean, I say this like half joking. People always laugh, but I'm serious. I think like God or the universe or whatever you want to call that thing out there that's so much bigger than us, I think it's recognized for a long time that I'm not very bright. And so it just lays this perfect path out in front of me. My problem is that for my whole life, I always thought that I'm just going to ignore that. I'm going to swim upstream no matter what. My dad used to say, like, if he said the sky was blue, I'd say, like, yeah, it's pink. Look over there, it's pink. I used to say, I'll cut off my nose to spite my face, and I'll cut off my head to spite you. And I really, like, that was just such a foolish way to live. So, the path getting it, I wrecked a car. I think Greg was here for this.
I was there when that happened.
Okay. Got thrown in jail for a while. I don't want to bring too many people into this because I don't have permission to share their stories, but wound up in Lubbock through a series of strange events. I get to Lubbock and I think like, okay, what do smart people do? And so I started going to the library. I've always loved libraries. I love to read. Got real obsessed with cryptozoology, which is like the Mothman and Bigfoot and all this stuff. I go there one time to get a book on, I think, the Mothman actually, and it wasn't there, but in its place, like where it should have been, was Stephen Hawking's A Brief History of Time and the Universe in a Nutshell. Got obsessed with like quantum mechanics and all this different stuff. I just realized like, oh my God, the world is so much bigger than me, shockingly. And that led me to another book called The Dancing Wu Li Masters, which was like looking at like the overlap between Eastern mysticism and quantum mechanics. That got me into meditation. And that's when I really recognized like, oh my gosh, like everything I've believed about myself is so wrong. I was getting a degree in sociology, a bachelor's, and I got into school. Texas Tech let me in. They said, you have to make A's through the summer, or this is your lab. I'd been kicked out of 4 or 5 schools by then. So I made it through. Greg was there for some of the schools that I got kicked out of. I like a glitch or something dropped me. And so I go to look, and it happened to like a bunch of people. And so I thought, I'm not waiting this line. I quit school. And so I drive around the loop to smoke a cigarette. I still smoked then. And I go down by this little school up the road from me, Lubbock Christian University. And I see on the billboard, it said, get your social work degree on the weekend. And I thought, social work, sociology, that's got to be the same thing, right?
Right.
I go in. Before I leave, they got me my books and some scholarships. And I went to school Friday nights and all day Saturday and got to spend a lot of time with my son. I have a 20-year-old. I have 2 little kids and a 20-year-old. And so that just worked. I got out. I got my program got canceled with a set of tax cuts forever ago. So I was looking for something else. That same teacher that showed interest in me got me into a master's in sociology at Tech. Get in there, meet my wife. That was 14 years ago. Really learned to think in a different way. And then one day I was headed east. This is the story. People tell me like, you should not tell this story. This is going to make your clients lose faith in you. I was headed east to go to a job interview. I saw a little boy riding his bike up the road, and he had a big black eye, and I heard a voice in my head that said, you're supposed to be a counselor. Literally made a U-turn, went back to that little LCU. They were interviewing for the cohort that day. They hired me to teach in the first month and then gave me a full-time job in the first 3 months. So that's how it's just like that. Like, it's just things are laid out for me when my ego doesn't get in the way and I don't get all resistant and start thinking I know better. So did that answer your question? That's a long ass story.
That was an amazing story. I got goosebumps just like thinking about it too, because I can imagine all the people in their life right now that are facing the same thing, but they're looking for that little scratch, little like scratch in the time-space continuum that's letting them see a little bit more of what's coming up next, or giving them that feeling like I need to turn around, right? I need to go and visit with that person, or I need to call somebody, right? Or whatever that may be.
You just got to be dumber. If you get dumb enough, like it'll literally just say it in your head. You're supposed to be a counselor, dummy. You just got to be that dumb.
Awesome. So James, I want to dive back into, we were talking about anxiety a minute ago. And when I introduced you, we talked about the course that you're currently teaching that deals with anxiety. And just in the intro, I love the way that you framed it. I'd love for you to talk a little bit more about that course and how you're using it to help people.
So I think that like so much of our narrative is about fighting and overcoming and stuff like that. And I really think that stuff kind of feeds ego. And so with anxiety, what it really depends, like you've got this anxiety, you've got this sense that something's wrong. And our thought is like, okay, I got to fight that. I got to conquer it. Well, that's kind of confirming that, oh yeah, something's wrong. We are in a fight here. What I've really found over the years is that anxiety is only a problem if you're really wishing it wasn't there. So I started thinking like, okay, what would an anxiety-free person look like? Somebody with no anxiety at all. They'd probably get hit by a car real quick, or bit by a snake, or like, just some kind of dumb thing would kill them, And so the course, like it's really like, I go back to like 200,000 years ago where, talk about what was it like to be a human then. Like it was a really tough world, man. Like it was brutal. Do you know there were giant kangaroos that like were predatory back in the day? Out here in Lubbock, there's this thing called, y'all look this up. Look up the short-faced bear.
Oh, I've seen it. Yeah.
The short-faced bear.
I've seen it.
That thing is terrifying, right? Yeah, they have a bunch of bones of it out here. So they got a big statue out of this Lubbock Lake landmark. And that's like what they were living in. I'm not even talking about other humans, starvation, like leopards. Like, we used to sleep in trees, leopards go in trees and eat primates all the time. So it was a brutal, hard world. And that's where like our hardware and our software developed. Like our prefrontal cortex is not any bigger than it was back then. And then I kind of walk people through. So like, if you look at like the 50 most important inventions since the wheel, like I'm not going to get the numbers exactly right, but like you've got like 200,000 years where there's nothing. There's like, okay, well, look, we got a lever, look, we got a wheel, look, we got agriculture. And then it just starts going faster, 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 faster. The oldest person alive today, like the amount of things they've seen change is astonishing. They've seen satellites and people in space and broadband internet, the Model T, look at how rapidly our technological and cultural evolution is just like accelerating past our brains and our bodies. And so it's really about learning that it's like you've got this this yapping dog that's always telling you something's wrong because it thinks it is. Like it's living in a terrifying world. It's not hurting you. It's trying to help you. And if you go to the dog and you scream at it, you're like, shut up, try to kick it, and you're throwing things at that dog's going to yap more. That's not going to calm that dog down. But that's what we do to ourselves. And so it's really about learning to understand that like your anxiety is not your enemy. And then on top of that, like really like when we talk about anxiety, we're talking about these physical sensations. And I say this as a person, like I have anxiety. It's the first thing that's present when I wake up. Looking back over my life, I never realized how much anxiety I was dealing with. I think a lot of my drinking and drug use and just general stupidity was trying to manage anxiety. When I was a little kid, they would talk about like we'd go play football at this baseball field. I grew up in northern New Mexico, and they'd say I'd throw up on the way a lot. It's because I was nervous. I remember one time this one kid was running, another kid dove and pulled his pants down, and everybody saw his butt. That scared me to death that was going to happen to me. And I threw up all the time, I was anxious. They just, in the 80s, you were just a weird ass kid. Yeah. Now we know that's anxiety, and so it's really just about looking at that, staying with the sensations, the feeling you get in your chest when you're anxious. That's not unpleasant. If you had that feeling when you were going over the top of a roller coaster, you would label it as excitement.
Excitement. Yes. Yep. Yeah.
The framing, you paid money to be there. You waited in line, like hot, in the sun, in the Texas sun with a bunch of smelly ass people. Like you went out of your way to have that feeling. So in that moment, you're going to classify it as, ooh, this is awesome. If you have that moment when you wake up for no reason, or when you're going into a job interview, you're going to classify it as anxiety. Like the only difference between anxiety and excitement is the framing of the mind. And so learning to let it stay on just like an energy level And I hate using that word because like that word's used for everything. And it's like, so it doesn't mean anything anymore, but just like letting it remain on that sensation level, you'll find that when you don't add to it with stories from the mind, it goes away pretty quickly. It's astonishing.
We talk a lot about replacing weak thoughts with strong thoughts, right?
Okay.
And so it's the exact same thought. So it kind of goes into like, if you're really nervous about something, well, you reframe it. I'm really excited about this. I'm really scared about this job interview. I'm really excited about the opportunity it brings, right?
Yeah.
And so again, it goes back to reframing your thoughts. It's easy to talk about. It's a challenge to actually do it. But when you put in the work and the preparation and you make it a habit of catching that and just reframing, at least for me, that's been a really big benefit for the anxiety that I struggle with, and just catching that and be like, okay, Greg, I'm not going to ignore this feeling because it's true. I'm just going to change my perspective and look at it a little bit differently.
I heard it somewhere. It was probably like an Instagram post or something like that, but it said replace have to with get to. It's like, instead of I have to do this, I get to do this.
Yeah.
And I thought that was powerful in a very short phrase.
Have you ever made a list of the things you have to do? Like what? I'll do it with Sammy real quick. Like what are the things you have to do, man? You ever thought about that?
No, actually, I never have. No.
What do you have to do? What's the first thing that comes to mind that you have to do?
Sure. Work. Yeah.
No, you don't. You choose to go to work so that you can feed your family and stuff like that. What do you have to do?
Right.
Yeah. And then another answer is probably like eat, right?
Right.
You don't.
Yeah.
You eat so you don't die.
Yeah.
What do you have to do? Like, keep digging this down.
Yeah. It's an exercise that I do. It's called getting to like the root issues of things, right? So what do you have to do? I mean, you could say breathe, but then no. I mean, the only thing you have to do is die, right?
Part of my job is sometimes helping people not make decisions to make themselves stop breathing.
Yeah.
You don't have to breathe.
Yeah.
You have to die someday. Everything else in between is a choice.
Yeah.
And that's so important because we get locked into this thing of like, oh, I have to do this. I have to go take my stupid kids to the stupid park and everything's stupid and I hate everything. No, you're choosing to do those things. Don't choose something and then complain about it. My God.
Right.
I call that the 3-year-old exercise, because you just keep asking why.
There you go.
Why?
There you go. I
Why?
love that.
Yeah. And you just pretend you're a 3-year-old. Just keep asking why. And eventually you'll get there.
There you go.
Yeah, that's something that's funny is
like,
so many parents complain about their kids. They complain about their toddlers. All they do is ask why. And my rebuttal is, you know what? We should be doing that more as adults, because we question what and how and where, but we lose our why. And it goes back to purpose, right? When you really, really dive into that why, you start getting to the root issues of things. So, man, I love that little exercise, man. And everything is a choice. You're exactly right. And when you have a choice, why are you complaining about it, right?
Right. And sometimes and there are coerced choices. If I walk out into my front yard and somebody puts a gun in my head and says, give me your wallet, or I'm going to shoot you in your head. Like, I've got a choice there. It's a coerced choice.
Right.
And I know I'm nowhere near gangster enough to say like, nah, shoot me. I'm not that, but but we make these choices.
16-year-old James was.
16-year-old James probably would be dead.
Yeah.
Actually, 16-year-old James would probably have lived through it and just have like a chronic headache.
Yeah, exactly.
Would be my luck with it. But I think that we just have to ask that all the time. I ask myself all the time, like, why am I doing this? Like, is this something I really want to do? And if the answer is yes, okay, what do I like? Have I really examined that lately? A vast majority of the things I find I'm doing them for somebody else. And then I think, well, do I want to do this for them? Is this making me resent them? Am I choosing to do something for them and then like being annoyed with them? Because that's also ridiculous. Well, we all do it. Hey, you want to help me move? Sure. And then the day comes and we're like, son of a,
yeah.
Just tell them no. And it's led me to some very like uncomfortable things with people. And it's so funny. Like when somebody says like, hey, I was thinking we could do this. And I'll say, I'm not doing that. I don't want to do that. That doesn't sound like any fun to me. And it's shocking to people because we live on this, we lie so much. We lie so much.
Uh-huh.
Hey, do you want to help me do this? Oh, sure. I'd love to. I'll even with my wife, she'll say, hey, do you want to go to the mall with me? I'll say, I said, can you rephrase that so I don't have to lie to you? She said, will you go to the mall with me? Of course I will, because I love you. I'll never want to. Who wants to do that? But do I want to spend time with her? Do I want to enjoy the day? Of course I do.
Yeah.
So, but it's funny when you start like really pinning this down and like being honest with people. It's
well, I
so
love
fun.
I love the answer to that question too, James. It's like it's just like simple. Just be more honest with your answers. Hey, do you want to help me move on Saturday? Man, I don't want to, but you're my buddy, so I'll be there. And you know what? It's hey, it's not going to be easy, but you know what? Because I value love and service and helping people, I'll be there, right? And not putting on a facade about it. And a lot of times that's for you too, right? Because that helps get to your why, to make you realize, man, don't dread it because you're going to go do something that's uncomfortable, but appreciate it because you define the why of, you know what, this is someone that's important to me. Let's do them a solid, right?
Yeah, it cuts the resentment right out.
Yeah.
Also, it helps a lot, I think, in a professional standpoint as well. We've all heard the running joke too, right? Like this could have been an email. This meeting could have been an email.
Yes.
I find myself doing that. You know, it's like, okay, it's like, I need to call somebody. I need to talk to them about something. Yada. So I was like, wait a second. Do I really need to? I was like, no, I don't really need to. Like,
there you go.
Maybe let me go back and check that email, or, you know, let me go back and see the message I got or whatever it may be. Like, oh, you know what?
Yeah.
Never mind. That's not even needed. Don't even have to waste their time. You know?
There you go. And it's so freeing.
It is.
Speaking of professional work, James, one of the things I wanted to ask you about, you've talked previously about how you're really kind of transitioning more from the one-on-one coaching to building like an online curriculum to be able to help more people, to be able to do things that are more affordable for people. I would love to hear kind of your vision and your plans for that.
I mean, it's twofold. I think that a lot of this stuff is so priced out for people. You can look at these courses online, they're $999 and stuff like that. And I live a privileged ass existence, and I don't know many people that can fork over $1,000, you know? I do want to create something for people who can like, just hop on and get what they need. And it doesn't like put them in some kind of debt, you know? The other thing is I want to create some passive income. It hit me like, man, I make good money, but I gotta like my butt's got to be sitting in this chair talking to people. And, you know, I think it's Warren Buffett. If that's how you do it, you're going to work till the day you die. And I want to do stuff till the day I die, but I don't want to keep doing this till the day I die.
Yeah.
And so, you know, so I've got like, I've done an introduction to mindfulness course. The Befriending Anxiety, I'm building it intentionally to where I can put it out. This company approached me called LearnDesk out of, I think, California. So everything I'm building to where I can put it on their online platform as soon as it's ready to go. And I just want to do little things like that, like the simple ways to have a good life book. It's like I've spent the last 20 years like obsessively trying to figure out what's wrong with me. And I've spent a lot of money doing that. And I just like, a lot of it is just really simple. People like to like mystify and complicate stuff because then they can sell you that mystified, complicated answer. When a lot of it is just like, a lot of it's basic. And it's this stuff we've been talking about, like recognize that you're not your mind, learn to meditate. Stop making everything about yourself. Recognize that very little has to do with you. Pivotal moment in my life. Do y'all listen to Hardcore History? Do y'all know this podcast?
I don't listen to it regularly, but I'm familiar with it.
I've heard it a few times. Yeah.
Freaking amazing. He did one on World War I. And there's this one thing where he's talking about where 30,000 people died in a day. Yeah. And like, it just hit me like, oh my God, like I am so insignificant and I don't matter at all. And that freed me up so much. You know, Greg can attest to this. Like my whole life, I really thought that like I was the center of attention. And when I wasn't the center of attention, it felt like something was wrong and I would do something to become it. Recognizing that like this shit's not about me. That is so freeing, you know, just giving like being able to tell the ego, the yapping dog, everything is safe. We're fine. Just go take a nap by the fire and just let us hang let us hang out. If a serial killer comes in the door, let me know. If the house catches on fire, let me know. Otherwise, go to sleep. It's amazing how freeing that is. And that Hardcore History, just something about something he said, just like a lightning bolt to my skull. You are not important. You are not the main character. Oh, awesome. It was so freeing. So I don't know where I was going with that. I'm sorry.
Well, what jumps out to me, James, is, you say that, and it literally, hearing you say everything is safe, go to sleep, I honestly just made me even feel like an extra level of at peace with myself. Like that was really powerful. But the thing that I immediately thought was that is completely upside down in terms of a message compared to what our culture is literally preaching to us, that you are the center of attention. You are the star of your own movie. Everything does revolve around you. And then again, you see that we are living in a world right now with more anxiety, fear, depression, just chaos than we've ever had in recorded history. And so to hear you put it like that really just struck me right here in the chest.
And we're safer than we've ever been.
Isn't that funny?
You are safer than you've ever been. We have more luxuries than we've ever had.
Yeah.
I remember I really wanted a Legend of Zelda sweatshirt years and years and years ago. And it was the first time I'd ever had a debit card, and I found one online and I was able to order it. And it was amazing. You know what I'm saying? And now that's the norm. If I get on Amazon and I'm going to order something and it's like, it'll be there in 4 days, screw that. I'm going to go look for something like, I need it here tomorrow. Like, you better bring it in my door in 2 hours or I'm going to throw a fit. Like, we live with such unprecedented security and convenience. Yet, like you said, anxiety and depression are just through the roof. Loneliness is crippling people. That's one of the biggest questions I have. All the years as a counselor, how do you meet people in this town if you don't go to Texas Tech or the bar or church? My answer is you don't. You don't. I don't wander. We'll go up to random people and say hi. See how that works out. In a lot of ways, we're unraveling. All the things that are most valuable to us as a species are unraveling. And you're seeing that. You're seeing the effects.
You talk about comfort. This has been several years now. This is before the pandemic, but I was at the airport and a woman was just berating the woman at the check-in counter because her flight had been pushed back for the third time. And she was going to be, 4 hours late for her trip to Florida. And just, going off on this poor woman. Of course, this woman can't do anything. She's just taking
It's her fault.
It's her fault. But it occurred to me, and I may or may not have said this out loud to where she could hear it, but 300 years ago, for us to go from Dallas, Texas to Florida, we'd have been in a covered wagon. We'd have had a family of 6. 4 people would have died of dysentery. 1 would have gotten killed by wild Indians.
The Comanche would have got you out there.
And as someone with Comanche blood, I can say that. And then maybe you get to Florida over like a span of 8 months. And so you're upset that your flight is being delayed by about 6 hours, right? And again,
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to step on you. Go ahead.
Oh, no, that's just kind of the point of the story. But we've all been in that position to where your flight gets changed or your meeting gets moved back. And it does frustrate you. It infuriates you. So I have been that woman berating that person, right? Yeah. But it just makes you realize that, gosh, if you just take a step back and just think how good we really have it and just adopt that perception, man, you can just let a lot of things go.
You can let everything go. Like, there are not that many hills to die on. And you know me, like you know me when I was younger, every hill was a hill to die on.
I think you and I died on a few hills together, right?
Absolutely. Some dumb ones.
Yeah.
Some dumb ones. I would argue about anything, because my ego was so desperate for listen to me, But I really find these days, like there's not that many hills to die on. This is what I'm constantly, it's talking like older people, especially because the world's changing pretty quickly. I'm constantly asking, is this a hill to die on? Is God up there wringing his hands about this? And if the answer is no, well, shit, why are you? And I get, there are things that matter. There are things worth fighting for. There are things where we do have to take a stand. There's not near as many of them as we think, whether or not Avatar sucked or not, that's not a hill to die on. I hate Radiohead. I'm not going to fight anybody over it. Stuff like that. Boy, I insulted Chick-fil-A fans one day on Instagram, and my God, that's a hill a lot of people will die on, y'all.
Oh, yeah. Well, don't bring up college football because you know how that'll go.
Yeah. I don't mess with college football, man. Not in Texas. Right. I'm not talking to an Aggie. I'm not talking to Aggies and or Texas Tech fans either. So
yeah, I love the fact that you're branching out and doing more, like utilizing some of the opportunities that are out there. I have people that are close to me, and I know someone kind of in a similar space that you are in, that, you know, for years and years and years, this person's been able to impact and lives of people through counseling and coaching and all that as well. And they're finally taking that opportunity to branch out, and they're seeing that they're able to impact more and help more by leaving these kind of lasting legacy and these nuggets that they can pass along to other people. I'm a tech guy. Like I love technology. I nerd out over it all the time. And I love learning about how it impacts other people. I mean, for a long time I was a digital marketer. So I was also, you know, someone that would take nuances of data and, you know, understand how to best package these things over so that I can sell you or get you to look at this information that I want you to find, because I already knew more about you than you thought you ever gave out to anyone else. It was scary, you know?
Yeah.
But I'm always interested in learning more about like the best ways that you've seen people that are utilizing the technologies of today to really change their lives for the better as well. So I want to kind of flip the script a little bit and say, what are you seeing in your practice and your sessions with people that is good, you know, coming out of, you know, being connected or, you know, through this at least, or other platforms?
You know, I can say, I think there are genuine connections to be found on places like, you know, I keep mentioning Instagram because that's just the only one I really mess with. But like, I got a lot of people on there that I consider friends that I know about and I talk to and, you know, I interact with. If they ever came through town, I'd stop and see them. So I think there's that. I think there's a lot of really cool apps out there that like help you track like what you're doing. The screen time app on the iPhone is amazing. I think that like having access, like I have a Kindle and like, that's my favorite thing in the world. I got 423 books on it. That's amazing. They used to make fun of me on vacation because I carry a rolling backpack just for my books, you know, because you know, you don't got to do that anymore. I think that stuff's amazing. I think being able to reach out and talk to somebody, you know, across the country is astonishing, you know, to be able to talk to people from another country. In one day, I talked to people in China and India. That's amazing. I didn't know those were countries when I was 18. You know, I don't, if I knew who they were, I didn't know anything about them.
Yeah, and I didn't like them. That's right.
Yeah, they were bad guys. Yeah, right.
They were
nothing at all.
Right.
Yeah, and so I think that stuff is cool. I know a lot of people like with you know, with addictions, you know, finding like online groups, stuff like that. I think some people are using it really well. You have the wealth of the world's information at your fingertips. That's amazing. It's just the problem is that it's so much easier to go look at memes or videos of people dying than it is to actually, you know, learn something and sift information. You know, I see it on social media. That's the other thing I gotta get this going too, is just talking about the toxic teacher types is the tentative title, but just looking at the things that people do to lure you in and kind of trick you. You know, I saw a little, you know, they do like a little quote thing and it said, people don't change. They just become more of who they really are. And I thought, like, you break that down, like, okay, well, what do you mean by who they really are? I've seen people change. You see who made the quote was that House, the doctor guy. And from what I remember about him, like, wasn't he like a narcissistic, like pillhead or something?
Yeah.
From what I remember, I saw 1 or 2 episodes, but they throw that out there and it's like, this is the thing. But I think also people more and more, because of technology, they're becoming a little more like, they're able to pick up on that stuff. I think people are starting to recognize the tricks. And so I'm not anti-technology at all. I mean, I use it for, I mean, I'm on it all the time, you know, like I said, I've built a whole thing around Instagram.
Yeah.
So I'm with you.
How cool is it that we're all talking together? Sammy's in Frisco. I'm in downtown Dallas. You're in Lubbock, Texas, and we're having a conversation together.
Exactly. I mean, years ago, like we would have lost touch without all this, Greg, you know?
I think that's my biggest thing.
Yeah, the connection. It's, well, I think just like with Sammy, like I was telling him at the beginning, like I didn't feel like I was coming into a conversation with an old buddy and a stranger. It's like, you know, you ride your bike and you care about your family, and you know, it's like I have this idea of you and I like you already. That's cool. That's really cool. And so I'm hoping, I think the younger generation is aware of the pitfalls more. You know, I think that they're much more like savvy to all of it than we are.
I think it was just because it was so new and everything happened so fast right?
Right.
That it was like, gosh, like next thing you know, like the people with adversarial intentions were able to capitalize on that so fast, right? And back in the day, you know, even now, like we didn't really understand how much our data was worth, you know, just like,
Right.
you know, how precious our email address is, you know, that kind of stuff. Until you start getting spammed and you're like, oh, wow, how did this happen? You know, that kind of stuff too. So, yeah. But I also like from the use of technology, and I struggle with this in time to time, a couple different things is because we have the connection to all the information the world has ever provided at any time is in this, and I can access it at any time. But also I can get overwhelmed with like, gosh, I want to know that, or like, oh, I'm gonna buy this, you know, I'm gonna buy this lamp. Oh, I wonder if it's got good reviews. I better go check on it. Oh, this lamp is kind of like this lamp.
There you go.
What did my friends think about this? Oh, hey, anyone, do you have a lamp like this? Oh, this person doesn't like this lamp. You know, so it's this never-ending journey. Next thing you know, you don't even buy a lamp, and then you're still looking 4 days later at the same exact lamp that you wanted because you thought it looked nice. Right. So that's one of my struggles.
Those rabbit holes are deadly. That's why I read on a Kindle. I read on a Kindle instead of my phone or something else, is because I can't tell you the number of times when I'm reading on a Kindle that I'm like, oh, I want to go look that up. Oh, I need to go look that up. And you can't. And as soon as my next thing I'm moving to is that light phone. I don't know if y'all seen it, but it's super cool. Like, you know, no apps. I mean, it's God forbid, it's a phone with calls and texts.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
It's an actual phone, right?
Right. Like, because I do the same thing. Like I will, I keep my phone locked down to where I don't have a browser. I don't have apps. The only app I keep is Instagram because you have to use the app to do anything. But, you know, I don't keep any of that stuff on there because the number of random things that pop in my head, you know, that, you know, you're watching a video, I'm watching a video with my kids, and then it's like, you know, I don't know, what does turtle poop look like? And like, you're Googling that, like, what the hell? Like, how do we get there? You know? So yeah. And then I think there's, you know, the more addictive parts of the internet, you know, I tell people, and like, I get made fun of, and, you know, you're a prude. In 10 years, we're going to be talking about porn addiction very, very seriously. I'm shocked at the impact I've seen that'll have on people's lives. The desensitization from, you know, videos of people being killed and, you know, stuff like that. You know, like America's Funniest Home Videos used to be my favorite show. Now I can sit and watch videos of people like falling off of shit like anytime I want for as long as I want to, you know? So I think those are the darker corners that we've got to address. But like I said, I think the younger generation, man, they get it. They know.
That's what I'm hopeful for, James. It's if you look at the history of just humankind, we're resilient and we're adaptable, right? And if you just look at technology and you look at social media specifically, there's some great things about it, and there's some extremely dangerous things about it. And so, to your point, my hope as well is as we age on, we'll figure it out and we'll be able to get a grip on it and actually use it for something that's beneficial, as opposed to this thing that continues to like tear us down or, you know, hold us back. So it'll be interesting to see what happens.
We've survived everything so far.
Right. Crazy. Well, speaking of surviving, we've survived this podcast, this show. Nice. And so this is kind of where we start getting into our fourth quarter, and we'll start winding down. And so we ask every guest that comes on this show, James, these two questions. They're both subjective. There's no right or wrong answer. So just the first thing that comes to your mind. And so the first question is, when you think about just in your life, whether it's, what's the best way to phrase this? You know, the best advice, actionable tips, processes, or just something that like you learned that you were to apply to your life that made a really big impact that you can share with others. What's one of the first things that comes to your mind?
You are not your mind, man. You are not your mind. The mind is a tool, and it's gotten, it's slowly overtaken everything. If you are looking to buy a new car and you've got 5 kids and a construction business and you're looking at a Corvette, you need your mind to say, hey, where are we going to put the kids? Where are we going to haul materials? This thing doesn't even have a hitch. And it's not in our budget. That's the function. That's what it's there for. That's what we need it for. But then the mind starts in on, why did I have so many kids? Oh my gosh. You know, it gets out of its lane, and that's where we suffer. Learning to observe your thoughts, learning to observe your emotions with a friendly curiosity, with a friendly, compassionate curiosity is everything. You don't want to be detached. I went the detached route and suppressed my emotions for a long time, and that didn't turn out well. A friendly, compassionate awareness of everything that's going on around you and inside of you especially can change everything.
Man, that's powerful. That's an amazing answer. Second question we always ask our guests is, we're developing a TPG, the Pursuit of Growth time capsule. Okay. And we're going to bury it and dig it up 10 years later. What would you write as your note to yourself for when you dig this up?
What would I want to say to myself in 10 years?
In 10 years.
Essentially?
Yeah, to the future self.
About something like that.
This is kind of, James, this is kind of the old, the switcheroo on the question, what would you have told yourself 10 years ago?
Right.
It's the switch to what would you tell yourself 10 years from now?
I hope you're nothing like me.
Mm. Can you elaborate?
I look back at myself 5 years ago at the things I believed and the things I knew and the things I was so right about, and they're laughable. And I do that I can look at last year. I look at a year ago, the things that I was right about. I look at the things I thought I was right about, a couple of things last month. I don't want to keep being this guy. Like, this guy needs to grow and evolve, and he's got a lot of growing up to do and a lot of evolving to do. So I hope that 10-year guy, I hope he's nothing like me.
Love that.
I hope he looks at me and I hope he's laughing at me. You remember all that dumbass stuff you thought we were so right about?
Right.
You went on a podcast and said to everybody, oh my God, you got that wrong. Yeah, I hope 52-year-old, 53-year-old James is laughing at 42-year-old James. Because if not, something went wrong, right? Because I know I ain't got all the answers. So if he's not laughing, he's stagnated.
Well, I can tell you what, I also think he would look back and I think he'd also say, man, a lot of that is some solid gold, because what you shared today, I think, was really powerful. It was helpful for me listening to this conversation. And I guarantee you that people that listen to this episode are going to walk away with a lot of different ways to think about things and not think about things. And at this point, this is without a doubt my favorite part of every episode we do. This is where Sammy and I will attempt to narrow down this conversation and share with you 3 things that we really took away from this episode. So Sammy, do you want to ping pong back and forth? Do you want to lead off and then I'll go next and we'll go back and forth?
Yeah, I'll lead off because I have one. I couldn't take my note fast enough and my thought fast enough because we were bouncing around so many good topics. But I wanted you to repeat something, and I only caught half of the phrase in my notepad here was about anxiety not being a problem if we don't something, or it was something
we don't
about
feed it with our thoughts, maybe. Okay. Is that it?
It might have been, but I just remember it was like, okay, it's like that's something I definitely wanted to.
It may have been Sammy when he said, because I wrote this down too. Anxiety is a problem if you only wish it wasn't there.
There it is.
There you go. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was one of mine too. So that's a good one, Sammy.
Cool. You only wish it wasn't there. I wrote it and then I drew an arrow up like this needs to go up here in my 1, 2, 3 column.
One of the big things that I took away from this, and I mean, it's a short sentence, but we could talk for another hour and a half on it, was just the simple concept that stress is good. It helps us grow. And I loved your analogy of the shark. Like there ain't nothing that's messing with a shark, so it hadn't changed in 25 million years. And stress, if we look at it the right way, can be a very, very good thing. So again, it goes to reprogramming your mind. You look at the little child that can't walk, that analogy that you talked about. I thought that was really, really powerful. And again, in a world where if you ask every single person you encounter on the street, hey, how's your stress level right now? 99.9% of people are going to say, oh, I'm way too overstressed. Well, are you? Or is this something that really maybe frame your mind differently? So stress is good, helps us grow. I love that.
One of my other ones right at the beginning of the conversation was basically summarizing an opinion can be limiting. Remove it and analyze it. And I think that's a great thing to do, especially if you find yourself falling into that trap of always having those opinions.
Man, I've got to go back to you are not your mind. Like we touched on that, I think 2 or 3 times during our conversation. And every time it really got me thinking. Even at some point we were talking and I zoned out and I missed like a minute or 2 of the conversation because in my mind I was processing what that meant. Yeah. And I just think it's really, really powerful. And I think the stories that you shared and your examples that you gave, I think that's something that I'm going to go back to. And I'm going to listen to this again several times because I really want to ingrain that into my mind that you are not your mind. And again, it goes to this, the ego. And we talked about pride and just that whole very, very dangerous cliff that we've got to be very, very careful about. Now, I love Sammy's points about, you know, it's a balance. We do have to have certain ego, just like stress, it can be good, but when it goes too far, it just gets way out of control. So, man, I really appreciated that comment.
And my last one, well, not last one, I have many, but the next one that I will talk about is that anything you can observe can't be you. And again, it's kind of that, talk a little bit about the set and setting that I talked about, but overall, just it can't be you. It's not you.
Right. Everything is a choice. And man, I love, what did you call it? The why game, Sammy? Mm-hmm. I'm just drilling it down. Yeah. You know, what do you have to do today? What do you have to do today? That was really powerful. And again, I'm going to piggyback onto that. That conversation led us to something that I thought was extremely powerful when you said to that voice in your head, everything is safe, go to sleep. Unless there's a kangaroo bear or, you know, a serial killer coming in, everything is safe, go to sleep. Powerful.
Those were my 3. That's my favorite. I can't wait to re-listen to those. And that's something we didn't really touch on here. And before we move to the next section is, which actually lines up perfectly. We want you to be able to tell people how they can get a hold of you, how they can connect with you, what you have going on. It's that time for that shameless self-promotion. But I wanted to thank you because this morning I spent some time in preparation for this interview, and I was brushing my teeth and I was listening to your podcast about meditation. And I got an electric toothbrush, so it was kind of loud. So I was standing there doing this as I was like listening to it. But it was great about just finding time to do some meditation. And, you know, it can be 5 minutes, it can be whatever it is. And it was, not only was it well done from an audio perspective, I'm just, like I said, I'm a techie. So I listened to it and I thought it was really well done. But that's a practice that I used to have and I used to implement on days that I would not work out. So I like to stay fit. Yeah. I like to utilize my body and like, you know, stay physically fit and physical. But there were times when sometimes I can overdo it. And so I need to take a break. Well, I would beat myself up if I like didn't get back out there on the road the next day, or if I wasn't riding my bike or lifting weights, whatever it may be, because I had a big struggle with that for such a long time. So I started implementing, if I wasn't going to work out, I was going to meditate at least 5 minutes, at least, if not 15, 20. I think I downloaded an app or something like that. And I started doing it. And it was great. It was a great practice. And that spurred me this morning after listening to your podcast to say, you know what, I need to start installing that back in. So on the days that I'm not going to work out, I'm going to make a commitment. And I want this guy right here next to me to hold me accountable to it. But on days that I don't work out, I need to at least spend 5 minutes meditating. So I appreciate that. Thank you for sharing that information with us.
Oh, no problem. Thanks for listening to it. I appreciate that. So I'm supposed to talk about where I'm at and all that.
Yeah. How can people reach you if they want to learn more about you and kind of explore James Scott Henson further?
Man, that's the you know, all this talk about ego and all that. And now everything I have is James Scott Henson. I tried so many different brandings to avoid using my name. And like Amor Fati was one that didn't work. I had Embracing Fate was one. That's actually a very popular series of furry erotica. I'm never going to compete with furry erotica, so I had to move off that. So I finally just, everything's under my name. Just James Scott Henson. That's what I'm under on Instagram. Is James Scott Henson. My website's jamesscotthenson.com. It's the the podcast. I changed the name. The podcast is Simple Ways to Have a Good Life with James Scott Henson. That's all consolidated on my website, really. I don't really, have a Facebook page. I don't really mess with it. I don't mess with Twitter. My blog, my podcast, my videos, all that's there on the website, just James Scott Henson. If you do find me on Instagram, shoot me a message. Like, I actually like talking to people on there. I like to get to know people. I don't like this thing where you have a certain number of followers and they all just become like these faceless people. Mm-hmm. I'm actually really bad about deleting followers. I don't know. I go on binges and just delete everybody I don't recognize. So yeah, shoot me a message. I like connecting with people in a way that means something. Mm-hmm. Outside of the clicking the little hearts or leaving like a comment with like hearts, starry eyes, rainbows. Like, right. I don't know anything about you from that. So yeah, Instagram and my website. That's what I do. That's where everything is.
And can people? I was going to ask, Sammy. Can people connect with you for still like counseling or coaching? Or
I'm not really doing counseling anymore. Coaching, okay. I do on a case-by-case basis. If somebody reaches out to me and what they're bringing interests me, I say yes. If it doesn't, I help them find somebody else. If it's not in my wheelhouse, or if I know somebody who will do it better than I will, I'll send them that way. But yeah, the Befriending Anxiety course I'm going to do online. I'm going to do an online portion of it. So that would be something, maybe, if that's something that would be useful. All of this, you can just reach out to me through my website, really. Yeah. I have a mailing list. I haven't done it ever since I got COVID back in January. My mailing list I was just thinking that last week. I need to get that going again. And then I've got a free resource library that's got a bunch of cool stuff that's actually free. Like, I'm not trying to funnel you into you download something and then the next thing you get the email that's like, this is why you need to buy my $999 course.
I've seen a bunch of those. Yeah.
Oh, the funnels, man, the funnels. I'm wondering what the next new thing, I'm wondering what the thing after the funnel is, because now everybody recognizes the funnel and they're like, nope, they just X right out. So I'm wondering what's going to replace the funnel.
I'm a recovering digital marketer. Trust me, I know.
Yeah, you know this better than anybody. Yeah. So I'm curious what the next thing is.
Me too.
Catch us off guard and get us to buy some shit.
Right.
So yeah. Website and Instagram is where I'd say.
Well, I'll share this, James. Your website is phenomenal. Mm-hmm. And I went on there months ago and spent quite a bit of time. And from the articles you've written, the blogs, the podcast, what you put out is really, really good. And for anyone that enjoyed this conversation today, I encourage you, go to his website. It's jamesscotthenson.com, correct?
Yeah.
And just read the front page. And if that doesn't just let you realize, hey, this is going to be some good stuff, then I don't know what will. But James, this was a phenomenal conversation. Dude, so much fun to catch up with you. In terms of Live TPG, you can go to our website, livetpg.com or thepursuitofgrowth.com. You can find all of our social channels. You can find our blog. You can find more of these shows. And we encourage you to sign up for our newsletter so you can get alerts every time we put these out. But man, at the end of the day, this was a blast.
Y'all's book is good, by the way. Like,
thank you.
I have so many people like reach out to me like, hey, check out my YouTube channel. You're always kind of cringing because it's like, oh my God, this is going to suck. And how do I tell them? But I loved y'all's book, man. I read it cover to cover, and it's solid. It's that timeless type of stuff. There's no gimmick to it. And I really appreciated that. I think I wrote about it in the newsletter one time. I just appreciated it's Harry Potter. Everything these days is Twilight, where if you look back on it in 25 years, it's going to be really embarrassing and very dated. But everything in that book, man, somebody could pick it up in 50 years and that stuff is still going to help them grow. And that's the kind of stuff I like. Evergreen. Yeah. Sammy, evergreen content would be what we'd call it probably.
Right. Yeah. Thank you for saying that, James.
I enjoyed it, man. I thought y'all did great.
That means a lot. That's amazing. There's a lot of hard work in there, and
you can tell.
It was a joy. It was a joy to do it. And but wow, that means a lot.
The hard work and the joy shows, and that's important. Like the whole vibe of it is awesome. So good for y'all. Well, awesome.
James, I'm going to put you on the spot here. We would love to have you come back on this show again and continue this conversation. And quite honestly, there's a woman here in Dallas that Sammy and I are really good friends with, and she also does a mindfulness practice. Oh, nice. I would love to have the four of us go on together and really just talk about some of the things that we've talked about today, and continue on some different topics. Her name is Melissa Marks, and she's a really fascinating individual, but I think the four of us could have a really fun conversation together.
It just froze up on me. I apologize. Can you say that again?
Yeah, I just reiterated that I think we could have a great conversation together, the four of us. So yeah, Melissa Marks, look her up online. And in fact, I'll shoot you her information in an email.
I think it froze up completely.
Yeah, I think we're freezing now.
Oh, there we go. If you're saying all four of us sit down, I'm in. This was fun. I enjoyed it.
Awesome. With that, guys, we'll sign off. As always, man, it was so much fun. James, we need to catch up in person. And
sure.
Until we do it again, man, peace and live TPG.
Thanks.